biblical tradition is monarchism. For God rules in the universe of space and time as its monarch, and the gods, as near ontological equals, rule at his side. Of course, if the ontological gulf between God and man, as demanded by mainstream Christianity, is not found in early biblical thought, and if it is understood that God and man are of the same race, then the original theosis held by early Christians would necessarily be much different than classical Christian metaphysics would demand. Hebrews, Jews, and early Christians believed that men are in the physical, spiritual, moral likeness of God, and that there is no great ontological gulf between the nature of God and man. Early Christians believed that the faithful would dwell in the presence of God, Christ, and the gods as resurrected beings of physical and spiritual moral perfection. Nothing unclean or unholy can dwell in the presence of God. So men and women who have followed Christ's example and have overcome all things through his grace will necessarily be clean and holy before they may live in his presence. Their bodies will no longer be subject to decay, disease, and death, for they will be like Christ's perfect and resplendent form. If this is so, then what would separate the nature of resurrected and perfected man from that of the gods, or that of the Father and the Son? If we mirror Christ's resplendent celestial body, then will we not mirror the power, honor, and glory of Christ himself? And if Christ is in the exact image of the Father, then it seems that man would also mirror the image of God himself. The remarkable conclusion is that if God and mankind are of the same race, kindred beings who already share many of each other's anthropomorphic attributes, then not only is it ontologically possible that men and women could eventually become like God, but it is also probable. Let us look then at different depictions of theosis as seen in early Judeo-Christian thought. The first indications of theosis in Hebrew religion are found in the role of prophets of ancient Israel. It is understood that part of the prophetic calling is to act as a messenger of the heavenly council. E. Theodore Moen Jr. points out that the prophet Haggai is called the messenger of Yahweh in precisely the same manner that the gods on the council are called messengers. He indicates that the designation Nabi implies the background of the council, for the prophet was called to proclaim the will of the deity, which was issued from the assembly. He translates Jeremiah 23, 18 and 22. Who among them has stood in the council, the Son of Yahweh, of the Lord, to receive and hear his word? If they had stood in my council, then they would have proclaimed my words to the people. He also explains that Amos 3:7 implies prophetic presence in the heavenly council. Martha Himmelfarb concurs, saying that in ancient Israel, the prophets claimed for themselves the role of messengers alongside the regular members of the council. In fact, the only reason we have a detailed account of the heavenly assembly in 1 Kings chapter 22 is because the prophet Micaiah used his presence in the heavenly assembly as evidence of his authority as the messenger of the council of the gods. Moen even argues that a mortal member of the heavenly council can be an important part of the council's deliberations. He indicates that the intervention of one of the participants can help to bring about the end of the council's deliberations, and that a human or angelic agent will be commissioned to carry out the decisions of the council. The prophets Isaiah and Zechariah are good examples of this human intervention in heavenly affairs. Isaiah is called into the heavenly assembly, sees God enthroned in majestic splendor upon his throne, and is cleansed of iniquity. He then listens as God addresses the assembled members and asks, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Isaiah ends the deliberations of the heavenly assembly by volunteering to act as the messenger of the council. "Here I am, send me." The prophet Zechariah, who acts as God's prophetic messenger, is a member of the council and actively participates in the induction of Joshua the high priest into the divine assembly, as he calls for the gods to place a priestly headdress, a turban or cap, on Joshua as part of his heavenly initiation. After he calls out to the gods, "Let them set a fair mitre upon his head," the gods accede to his wishes, and they dress Joshua in the same heavenly clothing they wear. Indeed, when Joshua is told that he will have access to the gods, those that stand by, and that the gods are his fellows, or associates, or colleagues, it is seen that the high priest of Israel is also a member of that divine body. It is seen, therefore, that mortal men were welcomed into and became members of the heavenly council of the gods. What these texts do not explain is whether prophets and other prominent figures will retain these exalted positions in the hereafter. Also not explained is the differences that remain between the nature of the gods and the mortal servant of the council. To explore these issues further, we must turn to the Old Testament pseudepigrapha and other non-canonical early Judeo-Christian writings. The extent to which Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity will have deified prophets, as well as Old Testament patriarchs and other Hebrew Jewish heroes, as seen in Old Testament pseudepigraphal documents. These ancient documents, written by Jews in the centuries immediately before and after Christ, and occasionally edited or expanded upon by Christians, were exclusively preserved by Christians after the Rabbinic period. They illustrate that a significant portion of Jews and Christians after the first century effectively retained their early Judeo-Christian roots. These are folk who, like most of their first century counterparts, were essentially unaware of the Greek metaphysical tradition that had influenced some Jews and had begun to penetrate Christianity to the educated elite in the beginning of the 2nd century. The theosis of prophets, patriarchs, and heroes is quite pronounced in these documents as the major figures of the Old Testament become exalted members of the council and are enthroned in the highest heaven with a majesty equal to that of the gods. The Ascension of Isaiah details the exaltation of the prophet Isaiah. The text records that Isaiah experiences an increase of glory as he's escorted to the highest heaven to stand before God. Isaiah questions the glorious angel who sent to escort him to the presence of God. The glory and office of that angel indicate that he is a member of the council of the gods. I saw a glorious angel. His glory was not like the glory of the angels which I always used to see, but he had a great glory and an office, such that I cannot describe the glory of this angel. And I saw when he took hold of me by my hand, and I said to him, "Who are you, and where are you taking me?" And he said to me, "You will see one greater than me, and the Father of the one who is greater you will also see. Because for this purpose I was sent from the 7th heaven, that I might make all this clear to you." Isaiah notes a transformation taking place in him as they ascend through each heaven. He knows that the glory of my face was being transformed as he went up from heaven to heaven, meaning that Isaiah began to shine with celestial light as he entered the first heaven, and that each time he enters the next higher realm, he experiences a further transformation and glorification. Isaiah is told that after his transformation is complete, after he enters the highest heaven, that the Lord will resemble your appearance and likeness, indicating that Isaiah's glory upon entering the 7th heaven will mirror that had by the Son of God. The angel escorting him also tells Isaiah that he has a throne, robes, and a crown waiting for him in the highest heaven. For above all the heavens and their angels is placed your throne, and also your robes and your crown which you are to see. Hear then this from also your companion. When from the body, by the will of God, you have come up here, then you will receive the robe which you will see, and also the other numbered robes placed there you will see. And then you will be equal to the angels who are in the second heaven. The astonishing promise contained